Hey, I'm the Warmaster, Josh Barnett, and you are listening to the Bootleg Universe podcast.
You are a fascinating character to me, person, friend. Because you straddle a lot of different worlds, and you're not a superficial dude at all. Like, if you give a shit about something, you go super deep. You go super fucking deep, and you put a lot of thought into it, right? You're not just like, what is that? And you form your own opinions. You exist in the wrestling world, the pro wrestling world, the mixed martial arts world. And you can even argue, because you do this all over the world, like, because in some respect, Japanese wrestling and American wrestling are like kind of different things in a way, but let's just call it wrestling, mixed martial arts, right? You're in film and TV, but not in the way of like, oh, I'm a fighter, let me cameo in a movie. You're like, no, I'm an actor. I'm a real fucking performer. Like, this is something I care about because film is like a love of yours. Right?
Very much so.
And you are as big of a nerd as I am.
I'll agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, when I like talk to you, I feel like kind of validated because I'm like, dude, like I can be talking about nerdy shit, and if someone attacks us, you can beat them up. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. And I had to pay for every ounce of nerd dork love I ever had. You know, I lived in a time where no hot chicks cosplayed, whether they were legitimate or they were just trying to milk an audience that they felt like they had massive gravity upon at any comic convention I ever attended, period. It just never happened. Like Adrian Curry? Like, you would never get a girl like that showing up anywhere near us.
Yeah.
And even then, I liked obscure stuff even within that mix, because I got into manga and so I spent a lot of time trying to like dig through and find this.
American dude of your generation to know what Berserk is, like, blows my mind.
I mean, it has had some benefit by having the more recent animated films on Netflix, and it has had some expansion. I mean, when Miura-san died, there was actually a pretty big outpouring.
Absolutely,
folks. But still. I knew what Berserk was in like 2000.
You're like, yes, that's the point I'm making. This isn't like a recent, like, okay, yeah, great. It came on Netflix. Now more people know about it. And there's like social media where it's like, oh, what is this thing? I want to learn. Oh, there's American IP. There's like a saturation of American IP. It starts feeling the same. It's all corporate. It's all sanitized. So people are turning towards Japan and being like, whoa, these creators are making some interesting stuff, and it's been going for a long time. They seem really committed to telling one universe, the story of one universe over a long period of time. That's all great. You predate all of that. You were into it before it was accessible.
True, and some of my favorite stuff is less accessible items, like Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Fist of the North Star, even though that has penetrated globally in a lot of different ways. Still not that huge in the US.
So you are in a spot. So, like, I love your perspective, and I would love to talk about the difference between UFC and wrestling from the perspective of someone who is in both worlds. You're not a UFC guy going to, and I'm calling it UFC, I mean mixed martial arts. You're not a MMA guy going to wrestling. You're not a wrestler going to MMA. It's like you are of both. And then you're not like a combat athlete trying to be a storyteller.
No.
Like, you are all three of those merged into one body.
The simplest way to explain the difference between MMA, or I should say how MMA and wrestling are two sides of the same coin, is that both stem from combat sports.
Yes.
They stem from pro wrestling was a legitimate combat sports done all over the world, globally. It was straight up. They had different variations you come across. Sometimes it's a regional thing. Sometimes it's like a style thing. Like, oh, we have a Japanese jiu-jitsu guy, and so we'll make the first out of 3 falls with the jacket on. Then the second one will be with it off, and then the third they'll maybe flip a coin. the term no holds barred, because some places would bar strangleholds, or they might bar a full Nelson or something like that. And so they could have a match and go, okay, nothing, everything's legal. And then there was even stuff called all in, which could be like MMA with punches and headbutts and everything. And even prior to the Marquis of Queensberry rules of boxing in England, it could be practically MMA, if not exactly. So you have this huge, legitimate, what you would call shoot style of combat sports in professional wrestling that eventually turns into the predetermined worked style that we see today for a variety of reasons. On the MMA side of things, it's just combat sports with more restrictions removed than we had gotten accustomed to, and allow for a more dynamic martial arts playing sphere. But they both start the same way. They just slightly converge in that both still have to entertain. Both, you still need to be able to offer something that is a unique product, let's say, that is only purchasable by purchasing you. And on top of that, you're both going to end up telling stories. In the MMA side of things, you have some ability with what you say and a bit about your own personal background and life, and as that leads into whatever it is you're doing. But the fight's gonna unravel the way it wants to unravel, even if you're the victor or you're the loser. Like, any number of stories can be told in that span of however long that fight lasts.
Sure.
And then from there, it moves on.
Okay.
In professional wrestling, you're going to create the story and tell it in the ring, but you're going to tell it in a way, instead of, now that you're cooperating with each other, you guys, to a degree, you guys are going to work to tell that story in a somewhat cooperative sense. I say somewhat because professional wrestling should never be 100% cooperation. It should be a lot of improv, to be perfectly honest.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so on the MMA side of things, there's no cooperation on that story. The story will be told in one way or the other.
Well, there is cooperation on some level because you're cooperating to fight.
Well, yes.
There's a contract that we're going to fight.
Yes.
You've agreed that there's combat.
But
right?
as far as the story is concerned, the story lays itself out in the ring, however it lays out.
Well, the story is you're going to fight.
Well, I'm saying the story that's the initial.
Got it.
But and there could be lead up into it. You could have had like a beef because you guys used to be Eric's training partners. You come from one city, they come from another city that are rivals. I mean,
you're a submission specialist. This person's more of like, I guess, and I don't, yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Well, you've chosen a nice example. Okay, submission specialist versus a striking specialist, right?
Yes.
And so you've got all this stuff that leads into the story to what I would say this is a lot like this shows up quite a bit actually in things in life. This is a lot like an hourglass problem. So you start off at the bottom of the hourglass and all these different converging factors from your life, if you even look at it that way, or from both of your guys, boom, they all meet into this center point. You both come from rival cities. One's a submission guy, one's a striker, so on and so forth. They get into the ring. Okay, so there's all this lead up into it that creates its own story. And the promotion will help try to facilitate what that story is, especially if they have half an ounce of intelligence. You get in the ring, it lays itself out. And then let's just say the striker, the kickboxer, somehow submits the submission guy. Now all of a sudden, a whole new story gets told off of the back of everything else there. And so that story in the ring unfolds however it unfolds. And there is no control over that.
For sure.
And so from there, boom, and then let's say these cities now, that rivalry is now even like super hot. And so the next event now you play off of that and you have a 5-on-5. You have 5 fighters from city A and 5 fighters from city B, and captain of that team is submission guy and captain of the other team is kickboxing guy. And you see how it all lays out. And so the story then just keeps progressing and progressing and progressing, but you don't know what that story is going to be until they go out there and fight.
Sure.
Whereas in the pro wrestling side of things, you have an idea. But even then, there is a bit of the fact that you can tell that story, but the viewer might interpret it a completely opposite way than you would expect it. And you still got to roll with it.
I have a question about wrestling.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned improv, right? So from the way I understand it, if you're a developing wrestler, you'll plan the whole thing out, right? So you'll be like, okay, first you put me in the headlock, you throw me, and then I'll hit my finishing, beat by beat. It's almost like a script. Is it the case that once you are at the highest level of it, you're calling it in the ring? It is pure improv. You are reacting, you are feeling something magnetic in the crowd, within yourself, within your performer, and you are making the crowd react and telling them a story that you are co-creating in real time.
I would say my definition of that, it goes along that route,
Okay.
that progression.
Cool.
But I would also say what backs it up is the bulk, in fact, I would say all of the figures from these earlier generations, from the 70s into the 80s, even into the 90s. These legendary wrestlers that everyone has someone that they look to, like your Antonio Inokis, your Macho Man Randy Savages, your Ric Flairs, your Dean Malenkos, whatever, like insert famous, incredible, legendary wrestler, Terry Funk.
Vampiro.
They don't call all of it before they get in the ring.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was. Like it was, in fact, you might talk about certain moments and things, but otherwise you just go out there and you go.
Right.
And you guys feel comfortable with that, not only because this guy's been at it doing his bit and earning his stripes, but you guys probably all came up from a combat sports background. So no, the entry into professional wrestling used to be very highly guarded and very regimented. Sure. And so
they would like bully you
100%
into away from the business.
Yes,
right?
they would kick the crap out of you is what they would do. Is they would hold tryouts and people would show up and they would just get stretched, which is like submission holds put on them and stuff. They'd be put through tons of conditioning just to see like, oh, you think you're going to show up here just fat and out of shape? Like, this is not going to happen. And what about Dusty Rhodes? And you go, well, if you think Dusty Rhodes was out of shape per se, the guy was recruited by the Miami Dolphins to play professional football, and he was a collegiate football star. And then he decided he could make more money doing wrestling. It's like, if you think you can fuck with Dusty Rhodes, you're wrong. If you look at old Dick football star, or you look at Ric Flair. Well, Ric Flair was an amateur wrestler, football star, went into powerlifting. Then he was trained by Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson. In just a cold, freezing barn in the middle of Minnesota, training alongside Khosrow, the Iron Sheik. So you're nothing. And then what was another of his training stablemates is Chris Taylor, U.S. Olympian in freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling. So you have everybody in there is a legit dude. And then you had like the Sharky side, where he went and he picked out these guys, these bouncers out of the nastiest bars you could find. It's like you get the Road Warriors and you get buried. These guys that fought people every single night. And then they get out there, and then when they get in the ring and they start putting the hurt on people, you go, that's not something I ever want to be on the other end of. You see it and you have reverence towards it. And to have that, you have to make sure that the people that are getting across the line, so to speak, are really capable of embodying the gusto that they can come off as legitimately tough. Not whether they're actually bad guys or good guys, but that you believe when they're doing stuff that it matters.
Yeah. You wouldn't mess with this person because then it exposes the business.
And in fact, it used to be like, JR could tell stories of, Bill Watts. You go out there, you don't go out and get into fights at all. But if you do, you better win, because if you lose, you're gone. You're kicked out.
Because it exposes the business.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's like, it'd be one thing for a guy to go out and get into a professional fight, let's say, like boxing, kickboxing, MMA, and lose that. Okay. But it was like, you can't get beat up by civilians because that destroys the entire illusion.
Well, also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like if you go back to the territory days and we own a wrestling I own a wrestling promotion. You are my top guy.
Yeah.
I'm doing a trade. I'm sending you over to fight not their top guy, right? Because we're not going to have the top guys fight.
Right.
Hold that. We send you over. You're kind of in enemy territory.
Yeah.
Right? Like their third guy, their third to top guy may try to just pin you even though we've agreed that you're going to go over.
So he could be the man.
He could be the man. And so you need to be able to, like, if he's pulling that shit, choke him out.
Yeah.
Right?
But then now I already can hear the screams and the wailings in the background. The modern consideration, the solution on this is, oh, you just have an overarching giant body that just tells everybody what to do. And it's like, why would you want to live your life that way? Where I need someone else. I have to defer everything to some sort of material higher authority.
For sure.
And then I have to allow them to decide what I get to do and what they get to do instead of, you know what, I can control my own destiny in my own hands. And I understand that there's no guarantees in any of this.
Yes.
And I'm fine with that. It's just like the thing about MMA and CTE that I keep seeing up now. And I'm totally for, CTE.
What's CTE?
Something traumatic encephalitis. It's
like brain injury?
Yes, it has to do with brain injuries from impact.
Got it.
And so I'm 100% on board with CTE education. I'm 100% on board with doing more studies onto it, figuring out what we can do to reduce the effects of it and to reduce it in general. I'm on board with trying to make suggestions about training and other aspects where a lot of damage can be done, but unseen. Great. But what I'm not on board with is putting bubble wrap on combat sports to satisfy perhaps somebody's, want to reduce CTE. Because guess what? I signed up to fight when there was no money to be had. There was no fame to really be grabbed all that much. We were told by every major politician that we're all evil and terrible and that them and all their collusion with people involved in the boxing industry, McCain, would go around and then choose an easy target that they could pick on to make it seem like they're actually doing something for all the money that they get from us. Mm-hmm. And so, I lived in an era where the idea of doing anything at the level of Conor McGregor was impossible. Mm-hmm. Not even just impossible. It would be outright hostile towards you doing this. So,
yeah, I also. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, all I was going to buttress it with or button it up with was that I knew that I could die.
Yes,
in the ring, and honestly, I didn't feel like there was anything better than dying doing what I love.
Yes, I can verify this. Because you said this to your ex-girlfriend who told me this and said she was like freaking out like every time you fought.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have comfort in that.
Yeah.
And most people, a friend of mine, he died in the bathroom at the house they were at with these other friends of mine. They're all roommates. And he died because he had, I believe it was a really bad allergic reaction to something or whatever. It brought on an asthmatic attack and he died. Couldn't get it taken. And I said, yeah, it's a horrible way to die. But I said, but think of this. Who was the first person that found him? Well, you did. His friend, one of his best friends in the whole world. Who took care of this body when it was said and done? You did. You went and you facilitated this. Where did he die? In a house that he loved, with people he loved around his life. And while I would have wished for a better way for him to have died, not that we ever get to necessarily choose that, but this could be 10 times worse. It could be 10 times worse. And in fact, being the way in which you die is an important thing in my life and how you approach
for sure
when this
You're
could
a
be
warrior.
the effect. And so for me, going into the ring and fighting, great. I love it. And I know what's at risk. And I understood that fully and decided it was worth it.
Right.
And that's all I'm saying.
You live by this, you're a warrior. Like straight up. When the pandemic hit, I don't know if you remember this, I called you up and I said, hey, where are you right now? Because if this thing turns into a zombie virus, you are now my leader. I am following you and you are my leader. What do I need to do if the zombie comes? It's like you. And I told, yeah, and I meant it because you are a man of another time.
It's weird to be in this time at times, and I still have to be.
Because I don't meet young people like you.
And that's
like
true.
I don't meet
rare.
like 22-year-olds like you.
No, and it's
and maybe it's just the crowd I'm keeping.
Well, it could be some of it's. I'm sure it's some of that. It's also some of just where they grew up, their own particular. I would say a lot of some of the stuff is really, I think, like it is kind of it's your inborn sentiments, right?
Yeah.
The kind of person that you actually are. But also, I think I have a benefit by being a Gen Xer in that born in 77, I got to experience analog life as it transitioned to digital, but early digital. And then and then remembering what those differences were and what was good about each and what it was like to then grow into this new digital side
sure.
of our society.
Yeah.
But knowing what that analog side was, and even deeper than that, because I had just a natural personality that made me want to get involved in even older approaches and older aesthetics and what have you. Kids these days, they're completely thrown into total digital, like a completely digital womb around everything they do in the world. And they're encouraged to, in fact, embrace all expansions within it, as well as for the sake of the simplicity that it can bring to your life, the fact that it can make the efficiency it can create to it, the integratedness of everything. And so in that, the idea of dealing with things in an analog sense might seem incredibly foreign to a 22-year-old. Not to mention, I honestly believe, I'd heard this before and it blew my mind, that kids, I say kids these days, are kind of born completely ahistorical. Like they have no idea about history at large at all. Like everything seems utterly of this moment and they can't imagine what it was like. Everything that came before it was like a dream.
Where did you hear this?
I forget.
That's
some podcast somewhere.
That's not been my experience.
I honestly, I kind of feel like it is.
Yeah?
I feel like it's true in that people's understanding of the past is often, it's like something that maybe existed in some other realm and time that it's just like, it's this bygone relic that they've heard of once. They don't really know what it is.
So this wasn't the case when you were growing up?
No, you were, well, for one, our education was really big on emphasizing a lot of older things for good or for bad. But my parents were also more interested in older things, and they were also more interested in their grandparents, their grand uncles, and all these kind of things.
What ethnicity are you?
As white as could be.
Okay.
Except for the small smattering of Cherokee from my family in Oklahoma.
But it sounds like this was also like a unique experience to you, right? Like your family was into history. You were like,
no, I mean, my family was not nearly as, they weren't necessarily as into history as much as I am.
You're right.
But yet there was always callbacks to previous patriarchs and matriarchs. There was conversations about ancestral things in that sense. I don't mean like in a deep woo-woo sort of way. I just meant your great-grandmother and great-grandfather, and them, they all came from the reservation for the Cherokees in Oklahoma, or like my dad on my mother's side was Mormon, though he agreed to give away the religious rights to my grandmother, who was Catholic. So my uncle and my mom were both raised Catholic. And so that was part of the stipulation for that marriage to happen. But then the Mormon side of things, like we have a giant book that traces it all the way back that they could figure to England and Scotland and other things like that. And just always having an understanding of our relatives in Ireland and County Cork and different things like that. And my dad being someone into hunting, fishing, and cars especially. So cars, you're always looking back towards what was as to what can be. And there's a lot of technology that even in the modern age is still just internal combustion engine stuff. Like it's not the way that they may have designed things with different materials and different angles and the way that they cut things are differently, but it's still the same compressor that was created way back when. They just, it moved away from the flathead all the way to the, like direct injection and different other technologies, but it's still the same stuff.
Sure. I feel like also part of that is like the way mass adoption works. Like early cars had horses' heads on them to explain to people, oh, this does what a horse does, right? Early MP3 players, the popular ones, look like CD players because it explains to the consumer, hey, this does what a CD player does. It's just you don't have a disc in it, and then you get the mass adoption of the new tech, and then it starts looking like its own thing eventually, right? I don't know where you stand on veganism or the thing, but
I think veganism is it's an ahistorical concept.
What's ahistorical?
Like it doesn't come from anything historical.
Sure.
It is completely man-made of a certain technological paradigm that we exist in post-modernity and modernity, and that it has zero roots in anything about human flourishing ever. But we now live in an age where it is possible to create a vegan diet, I imagine, in some way that could satisfy what you may. And I say could because I don't buy into that. I don't believe it's actually a healthier way of being. And I think it's an exception, not a rule. But we live in an era that has made it more feasible.
Sure. And totally. And that example, like vegan food, a lot of it, like Beyond Meat, is replicating meat, right?
Sure.
So we're in the CD player car with the horse in the front era
yeah,
of
sort of. I mean,
vegan
I would say
food.
that
Eventually it'll be
well, they would
its own
like it
thing.
to be that way, yeah. But
sure.
I'd also say that the idea that like Beyond Beef and all that kind of stuff is replicating something to get you to buy into it.
Yes.
Is because they would rather that you ate that instead of actually ate meat.
For sure.
It's also, I think, an intention to draw in people from another side, of course, with propaganda towards it being healthier, and not propaganda like, hey, go put the ingredients up against the ingredients of dog food and see how they're nearly the same. Or how we're always trying to say processed foods are generally less healthy, if not outright poisonous to you. Hey, here's a new processed food that we want to shove into your system, And so, I mean, the beyond, like the fake meat stuff is interesting because like I've been to supermarkets before where like a whole frozen section was almost entirely nothing but vegan food. Even though the vegan food section you would think would be a small little section amongst everything else.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, there is a real concerted effort to try and push this on the populace to get people to adopt the idea of eating, fake meat, bugs,
no different than cars having a horse.
Yeah.
This is head. No different than MP3 players looking like CD players, right? The 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 version of a new technology, which is what veganism kind of is, this new iteration. It's kind of a new technology.
Well, and there is investment behind both. Like there's investment behind the vegan food stuffs. There was investment behind MP3 technology at some point. And so they want this investment to succeed.
For sure.